Welcome, everyone. How are you doing, Alicia?
I'm doing great.
And hello to everybody who has been talking to us in the chat before we got started. This is Boyd here in Flint, Michigan, part of the CCO team. I'm along with Alicia Scott. Gosh, what's your title these days, Alicia?
I am lead subject matter expert.
I love it. And welcome
Yes.
everyone to the Postcoordination and ICD-11 using STEM codes and extension codes. Put on by Find a Code and also CCO.us. So we welcome you, and we just couldn't be excited to be always given all the kudos to Find a Code because they are so helpful to all of us in the medical coding field. And we talk about them all the time here at CCO.us. Right, Alicia?
That is correct. We're very grateful for uh, the work that we do with them and the fact that they listen to us, and when we request something, they give it to us.
Nice. And of course, Find a Code is put on as a part of the Innovi Health uh, what is it, group of companies, if you will. So
Yes. Yes.
they are a happening company over at Innovi Health. So we really appreciate being able to partner with them. So
If
tell us
you,
about what we're going to be doing tonight, Alicia. Give us an agenda.
all right. Well, hold on just a second. There's our agenda. We'll back up. Tonight, we are going to introduce the new series that CCO and FAC or Find a Code has sponsored on ICD-11. There is a lot of talk out there regarding ICD-11, and I'm glad that you're joining us. Make sure you tell your friends and peers that may also be interested in what the future holds, kind of get some insight as to what ICD-11 looks like. Again, we want to thank Find a Code for sponsoring this series that we can bring to you. They are also giving us a CEU, and we'll tell you more about that. Don't worry about putting your membership ID numbers. We don't need those. What you do need to be able to obtain the CEU for this course that we've started is register in the forum. You can register with the CCO free forum. It's real easy. Right there it is. There you go. CCO.pe/forum. That's the free forum. Now, if you choose to join CCO, the CCO club, you can do so, and then you'll be guaranteed your CEUs and a whole lot of other CEUs that are already in the club by doing that. But if you don't want to join the club and you just want the free CEU for tonight that Find a Code is sponsoring, then you can join the free forum. You do have to register, though. If you do not register, you will not be able to get the CEU. Again, you're going to go into the free forum. It's going to say you have to register to join the free forum, ultimately, is what you're doing. And then the free CEU will be given to you. And that free CEU is applicable for Find a Code's QPen. It's also the AAPC and AHEMA. It's accepted by all three of those. So again, you're going to get a CEU for 1 hour presentation. And if you choose to join the CCO club, that's cco.us/club, and then you won't have to register. But if you stay to the end, we have giveaways. Now, we're only doing that tonight because it's the premiere for the new series in ICD-11 that we're starting. You have a choice. Again, we'll draw randomly and let you know who the winner is at the end. And you have a choice between a year of Find a Code. You can get 5 med briefs, a year subscription, or you can get a blitz of your choice from CCO or the new QPen course. So again, it's all up to you. You can choose. We're going to be talking about the definition of post coordination, what it is, because that's a new concept with ICD-11. We're going to kind of compare how that's different in ICD-10 to what we'll be using in ICD-11. We're also going to talk about the benefits and post coordination of ICD-11, and we're going to give you examples so that we can kind of work through them together. We're ready to get started, aren't we, Boyd? Is there any other things that we need to cover before we take off? I couldn't hear you. There you are.
Sorry about that. Go ahead and get started. Yep, we're good to go.
All right. So buckle down, guys. This is a lot of information, but it's going to be a lot of fun. What is post coordination? This is a new term that's used in ICD-11. You're not going to see this in ICD-10 or if you're new to coding. And if you're an established coder, then you're probably thinking, what in the world is post coordination? And how is that going to be applicable to what we're doing in the future with coding? Again, it's a new feature. It's going to allow us to combine multiple codes. And because of that, we're going to be able to give higher specificity in a description. One of the things that is extremely beneficial for those of you that know what a CMS 1500 form looks like, and that's the form that is completed that all of the codes get sent out to the payer in. You know, it only gives you so many lines to put codes on. I think you are allowed 12 and 4 main ones ultimately. But we know many of our patients have more diagnoses than that. With post coordination, we're going to be able to tell multiple diagnoses that are related on one line. So that's extremely exciting. And I know it's probably blowing your mind thinking, how in the world are we going to do that? Ultimately, think of it this way. It is going to support linking 2 or more diagnoses together. So 2 or more diagnosis codes can be put on one line, and we call that a cluster, which we're going to break that down and tell you more about that. And then it's going to enable us to report the data at a higher level of specificity than we've ever been able to do in the past. It also is going to help us avoid the that I know this is a big word, but it's combinatorial explosion that is going to result from specifying codes from all possible manifestations of health conditions. So again, it's kind of cool. We trip ourselves up trying to make sure that we get all of the pertinent codes in the designated allotted space. Now we're not going to have a problem with that. So think about how that's going to be a game changer for risk adjustment. You know, that's my background. And then on top of that, why do I say almost every single one of the presentations that CCO gives, I find a way to say that because it's a little mantra. We code for statistical purposes. It happens to be a convenient way to get paid. Right now, statistically, why are we capturing those codes? So we can understand better a patient population and the needs for that patient population. So individual patient, what are their needs and specificity? And it extends into medical decision making. And then on top of that, being able to track a patient population and then a disease process. It also is going to allow us to better streamline other IT tools like AI. Now, I know many of you have heard AI and get a little fearful when you think the people fear mongering might say, you know, it's going to take your job. No, it's not going to take your job. What it's going to allow us to do is that when we code, it's going to find unique patient populations or diagnoses and procedures faster that cure disease. It's very exciting. We've got some great webinars in the club, the CCO club, regarding that. Let's compare real quick an overview of ICD-10 to ICD-11. Ultimately, what I-11 is going to give you is 28 chapters compared to I-10 giving us 22. And that means that we're going to have more detailed classifications. On top of that, the structure of I-11 is more flexible. Like I said, one of the things we're going to be able to do is add multiple codes on one line. It's got alphanumeric codes ranging from 1A00.00 to ZZ9Z.ZZ. And again, that is not to be intimidating. Just as you learned the format and structure of 9 from 10, it's the same thing. All of the content is the same or expanded. They haven't taken anything away. So as long as you know the content of ICD-10, you're going to be able to code it. And with I-10, we had the very first diagnosis code A00.0 that went to Z99.9. Also, I-11 includes over 55,000 unique codes, which is a significant increase of the 14,000 codes in I-10. The new chapters that they've added in I-11 are diseases of the immune system, also sleep-wake disorders. And I've been saying for a while that I don't know why sleep apnea doesn't risk adjust. I think that's coming down the pike because we now know how much, especially severe sleep apnea, affects or OSA affects other parts of the body and diagnoses. Disorders, let's see, that's the sleep-wake disorders and conditions related to sexual health. So that's 3 chapters that they've added. And I suspect before I-11 is implemented, we may even see some more chapters. I-11 incorporates advances in scientific and medical knowledge. It reflects a current understanding of disease and treatment. And one of the interesting things is it also is written more in the language of the way that clinicians speak. Now, we did see that when we first got into ICD-10 PCS, right? That was a game changer. It's significantly different than CPT. It provides a more comprehensive coverage of rare diseases with over 5,500 rare conditions now represented. And I would think that one of the reasons that is it's a global code set. Now, ICD-10 is a global code set as well. However, ICD-10-CM is the clinical modification, and ICD-10 was global, and they've gone one step further and made I-11 more integral and user-friendly globally. So that's exciting. The benefits of post-coordination, which is one of the things that is the overarching theme of tonight, is what is post-coordination and how is it beneficial, is that it enables us to capture additional information such as severity, etiology, anatomy, and other clinical details without creating excessive numbers of pre-coordinated codes. Okay, so it streamlines the code set. It also reduces the need for country specific modifications. So I have been asked multiple times since I've been talking about ICD-11, is it going to be ICD-11-CM again? And I think it will not be. Now, that is, if you're not aware, CM is clinical modifications, which is the United States version of ICD-10. All of the other countries have their own. Canada has CA, Australia has AU, and we make them kind of an integral part of our patient population. With I-11, it's global and it's supposed to be more AI friendly. So the overarching theory is, how do we track something like COVID-19 globally? Well, we can do that with I-11 better than we could with I-10, because you noticed how they had to implement 2 new codes in the middle of when the pandemic happened so that we could track them. It also enhances the ability to conduct large-scale international research and compare health data globally. I know that when my mother had breast cancer, one of the things that changed the protocol in her treatment, because she had 2 types, and one of the types we weren't significantly able to treat in the United States, but they had been treating it differently in the UK and in Europe, and they had 2 new medications that it was a game changer. So my mother had acquired breast cancer 3 years after they had brought that new medication into the United States. How did they know that? Because globally, they were researching. Now, it took 3 years, or it had been 3 years, but they had had that medication for like 8 years in Europe before we got it here. It had to go through FDA and so on and so forth, because the research, right, that we do is different than what they do. But we weren't on the same page, and ICD-11 is going to allow us to be on the same page. One of the things we need to understand about I-11 is that it's divided up into 2 parts. We have stem codes and extension codes. The best way to describe them is thinking of a stem code as the diagnosis that the person has, the reason they're there for their visit, and the extension codes are everything that describes in further detail the diagnosis code that you're working with. Uh, Plenty of examples here, and then we're able to pull these together almost like train cars on a train, and then we can run that diagnosis on the tracks to treating the patient. Now let's talk about the STEM codes. If you have attended any of our previous lectures about I-11, and we're relatively brief, given overviews, you may have seen some of this information before, or maybe you've already played with ICD-11. The thing to know is that your tabular list are all the same. So the index will be different, but the tabular, the bulk of the content, that's all the same. That's not going anywhere. We did with 11 add 3 new chapters, but hypertension, diabetes, and the way it's described, all of that is all still the same and still in the same order, which is going to be helpful. With the new codes, though, we're going to be able to present core clinical concepts, and we're going to be able to use them independently to relate to a health condition, because we're going to be able to, in a way, chop up those STEM codes and use one extension code that could be linked with lots of different STEM codes, whereas laterality with I-10 is built into the code, and this way you know that left is always going to be one code. Okay. The alphanumeric structure, I've already mentioned this, is going to be the 1A00 to 0.00, then goes all the way to ZZ9Z.ZZ. So that is a very expandable code set. We've got a lot more characters that we have the opportunity to use. With ICD-10, we only had 3 characters and then the decimal. Now we can have 4 characters before we get into the decimal of the code. So we just expanded the code set's ability by doing that alone. Now, each one of the chapters that we have in I-10 correlates and is in I-11. We know that anything to do with viruses and bacteria and so on and so forth, that's the first chapter. It's the same in ICD-11, which is going to be very comforting to you. With the STEM codes, we have pre-coordination, which is some of the STEM codes that incorporate the concepts of combining multiple clinical details into a single code. That's really it's somewhat the same in I-11, or I mean I-10, but they expanded it in 11. There's also unique linkage capability. So the STEM codes can be actually linked with other STEM codes or extensions, and we're going to give you examples of these to create a more detailed description of clinical concepts. With ICD-10, it's kind of black and white, right? The patient has diabetes. Well, with 9, the patient had diabetes, and then we had to, add another code for neuropathy and stuff like that. With 10, we were able to code diabetic neuropathy. But with 11, we're going to be able to say with one code using STEM and extensions that they're diabetic, what type of diabetic they are, with the neuropathy, and that they're on insulin, all in one code, and that they have morbid obesity and what their BMI is. Can you believe that? We're going to be able to put that all together on one line. It's all pertinent to the diagnosis of diabetes. It's pretty amazing. So the chapter organizations, the STEM codes, are actually organized in those 28 chapters, which is very similar to the setup with I-10. There's not going to be any craziness going on there. And then that is subdivided into the various disease categories and health-related domains. The flexibility with this is that our STEM code structure is going to allow for that greater flexibility, and it's going to represent complex medical conditions compared to the other versions that we've been able to use. And the example that I just gave you from 9 to 10 to 11 on a patient that's diabetic with such a common complication as neuropathy. It's very exciting. I know you guys are getting excited. Let us know how excited you are about some of the things that I'm telling you. One of the questions that comes up, and I just saw it out of the corner of my eye, we don't know when this is going to be implemented. I've been doing lectures on I-11 for over a year, and they said it would be no sooner than 24. Well, we're through 24. But know this, it is an act of Congress to change our code set because it's mandated. And therefore, that probably tells you a lot. And remember, Congress stopped the switch from 9 to 10 twice. Let's go back into the digital integration possibilities. The STEM codes are designed to be digital health ready. That's where AI comes in. If we want to track how many people had breast cancer last year in the United States, we were able to do that because of the code sets. We've been able to do that since I-9. However, it was a little bulky and it took time. With 10, it got it faster. And with 10, there was actually 900 codes for primary breast cancer. If you guys didn't know that, there was probably more than 900 codes for primary breast cancer because they divided the breast up into quadrants, and then that included also the laterality, and then those quadrants got divided up. So again, it's very well, what's the word I'm looking for? Robust to be able to code for that. But with I-11, we're going to be able to put on one line that the patient had primary breast cancer, secondary lung cancer, right? All on one line. Now, How is that going to change with digital readiness? With AI, we're able to extrapolate a theme or a statistic much faster. Again, that's why we code, right? And therefore, we could see how the comparison of how many people have ductal breast cancer compared to how many people that are HER2 positive, which my mother had those two types. And then if there is treatments that are involved and so on and so forth, AI can pull that data very, very quickly, and even better when we switch to I-11 because it is a digital ready code set. It is also multilingual. That means everybody in the world can use ICD-11. We'll be on the same page and will understand the alphanumeric way that we report. And then on top of the detailed descriptions, each one of the STEM codes in I-11 is accompanied by a short and a long description that's going to help you better understand the diagnosis and the proper use of the code. Now, we haven't really had that in the past. It's almost like opening up a cliff note for each diagnosis, and you get a little more information from that diagnosis. That's pretty exciting. All right, let's look at what some of these STEM codes look like. Now, there is an order to ICD-11, just like there was to 10. When we switched, I know a lot of people were intimidated, and there was a lot of fear mongering going on too, and people trying to get your money. But I want you to rest assured that there is a rhyme and a rhythm to the way I-11 is set up. You are not going to find this difficult. It's going to be just the repetitive use of it. You're going to get these just like you did I-10. But we're never meant to memorize the code set, although when we deal with it every day, we do. All right, let's look at just some ones that I pulled out that I know are extremely common. We start with hypertension. Now, I know it was very easy to code I-10 for hypertension, and I think in I-9 it was 401.9. So I-10 was pretty easy. With I-11, it's BA00.Z. Now that's essential hypertension unspecified. If you start specifying the different types, like with CKD and when that replaces I-10, I-11, I-12, and I-13, it's still going to be BA for all of those. And then we'll have the ability to start linking out other diagnoses. But the STEM code is if your patient is being seen for hypertension, they're a BA00.Z. Type 1 diabetes, 5A10. Type 2 just happens to be 5A11. Other is 5A13. Pretty easy, right? Very easy. GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, is DA22.Z. Now, what this is telling you with just these three, that if it is a circulatory or heart, it's going to probably start with a B. If it is an endocrine disorder, it's going to start with a 5. If it is a gastro or digestive tract, it's going to start with a D. Autism spectrum, 6A02.Z, and that means that all of those F codes that we used to see are going to now start with a 6. Malignant neoplasm of the breast unspecified, 2C6Z. Asthma uncomplicated, CA23.32. Now, you may wonder, well, how come some of these codes have a decimal and some don't? And the way you may have already seen this. Whenever you see a code that's unspecified, it's going to end in a Z. Z is unspecified. Isn't that easy? Now you've learned a couple things already that were extremely easy to achieve. Let's move on. Epilepsy or seizures unspecified. 8A6Z. Guess what? Parkinson's disease is also a nervous system, and it starts with an 8A also, 00.0Z. Obesity, 5B81.Z. What else was a 5 code? Diabetes, because they classify obesity as an endocrine in that and metabolism. So again, it starts with a B. Diabetes is 5A. Obesity codes are going to be 5B. Do you feel like you're getting a handle on the rhythm of how it's set up? We're just learning another format. You're learning another language, is what it is. The extension codes. Now let's talk about them, because we understand what the root, or not the root, but the stem code is. Okay. We have the diagnosis. That's the stem code. Everything else that we can use to describe the stem code, giving it flexibility and specificity, are extension codes. Now, these are not like add-on codes, but you might think of them like that. They're extensions to the STEM code. Purpose and characteristics are going to be, they add significant detail to the STEM code, right? So if you have a diabetic that's on long-term use of insulin, that's an extension code. We allow for multi-dimensional coding, reduce the total number of STEM codes needed. Again, we don't have to fill up a whole bunch of lines listing them, because they can all go on one line. Provide greater specificity in clinical documentation. There are things that are documented now that we can't code for because a code doesn't exist for it. And support more precise data recording and collection, because that's why we do what we do ultimately. What do the extension codes look like? Well, it's extremely easy to identify them. The first thing to know is that they all start with an X. So if you're going to do laterality, the code for left and the code for right will all start with an X. Or bilateral, it starts with an X. Now, you'll also find in chapter X of ICD-11 all the extension codes. Now, the extension codes cannot be standalone codes, because it would be silly. We don't start with left. What does the person have? Left. The person doesn't have an extension code. Okay. It would be severity. Mild, moderate, and severe are all extension codes. So a person doesn't have severe obesity, they have obesity severe. They're also linked, the STEM codes are linked by the ampersand. How many of you guys, I'm just curious, knew what an ampersand or what that character on the keyboard was actually called? Ampersand. It almost looks like, if you're in music, a treble clef, right? Okay, so it's called an ampersand, and that's how we link STEM codes. And then extension codes will always have an X. There are two types of extension codes. Now, everything that's in the pale yellow are things that we can describe. Let's talk about those first. Severity scale, mild, moderate, or severe. Temporality, histopathology, dimensions. What's the length of a laceration? What's the depth of an ulcer? Level of consciousness, the Glasgow scoring system, that's all in there. Substances. What was the person taking? They were taking an opioid. There was a sleep medication, or they were exposed to fumes from butane. Now, diagnosis code descriptors, as well as devices, if a patient has a stoma, for example, and anatomy and topography. If you don't know what topography is, that is where we're able to kind of further describe the planes of something. So that you see that in the bones a lot too. But there are two types. So the first type is going to add detail to the STEM code from chapters 1 through 26. And then that's the basics like severity, etiology, anatomical site, and acuity. But the second type of extension codes is going to qualify the diagnosis code, and it can be used for any code in I-11. It really just gives an additional description of the disease itself. You won't even realize that there's two types because it's all integrated and you use it. You won't even think about it. You'll just know that it's beneficial and easy to use. Post coordination mechanics. Now let's break down kind of how it looks to use these codes. We will cluster codes together. That's the term that they came up with. You're going to link together individual parts of a diagnosis to create that comprehensive diagnostic statement. So if you have a patient, the first one that I've used to describe in past lectures and stuff was to say, let's say we had a diabetic with CKD and their CKD was end-stage renal disease. So they were on dialysis and they were on long-term use of insulin. All of that can be one code with post coordination. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Because you know how many, that's like 5 lines that we'd have to use for a 1500 form. The combinations, they're really set up to describe a single document clinical concept. So everything about that is pertinent. The patient has diabetes. That's the STEM code. The other STEM code is end-stage renal disease or CKD, and then it's staged ESRD, and that's the two STEM codes. But what is the stage? What is the dialysis that they're on, because there's more than one type of dialysis, and the fact that they're taking medication, insulin. The linking mechanisms, really easy to look at because we're going to use a / to link STEM codes, and we're going to use that ampersand to link extension codes to SIM codes. Really, really easy to do. With these clusters, this is some examples. Now, let's first look at the green box. It's like we've been saying, it's going to allow for increased specificity without really creating additional individual codes, therefore no long lists anymore. It enables more precise descriptions for clinical concepts. It provides flexibility in coding complex medical conditions, yes, and it supports better data collection for healthcare. Now that we know all of that, when we look at the way they're set up and they're in the clusters, it's going to make more sense. So if we are going to add STEM code to STEM code, where it'll look one way, but if we add a STEM code with an extension, it'll look another way. And this is how you're going to read it. Now, I kind of broke it down rudimentary first. So if we have a diabetic patient, they have type 2 diabetes, they have CKD, that's 2 STEM codes. But what is the stage of the CKD? It's stage 2. Okay. What about cerumen impaction? Well, we need to know laterality of the left ear. Okay. And you notice that we only have with cerumen impaction one STEM code, but we need laterality as the extension code. If we have a BKA, below the knee amputation, well, we need to know what side the amputation is on. The extension code gives us that. Fracture, okay, we need to know if it's open or closed. That's an extension. What's the grade of the fracture? Well, it's grade 111B, And that is another scaling system that you use when a patient has an open fracture. How about type 1 diabetes with CKD? 2 stem codes, okay? CKD with its stage, okay? And then it was present on admission, right? All of that can be done in one line. That's pretty amazing. But note, clusters have to always start with a stem code. You're never going to have a code that starts with an X in the first placement of a cluster. That's very important. Okay, now let's break it down and let's look at several examples so you can get a feel for it. We pulled out some pretty interesting ones that we found with crosswalking, and hopefully I'll be able to say them without embarrassing myself. But the first one is a type of leukemia. Now, the STEM code allows us to determine that it's acute because that's part of the STEM code, okay? And the type of leukemia. There's multiple types of leukemia. One of the reasons this is incredibly important is in risk adjustment for a RAF score, the weight of leukemia is really, really low. However, if the type of leukemia is identified, then the RAF score jumps up significantly and the HCC weight jumps up. So this one is an acute megakaryocytic leukemia. That's the STEM code. And then we use the ampersand to state a remission free of disease. Okay, so a remission free of disease is all one title. And the fact that we have so many different codes or diagnoses that would use in remission, or think of people that smoke, or they have had, say, an opioid disorder. Again, in remission is now added to all of those. Exciting, right? So this is what it looks like spread out so that you can see the STEM code and the extension code. And then this is what it's going to appear like on one line. That's all one code, but it makes this huge statement. It's like a sentence. It's grammar. Okay, let's look at our next example. We have malignant neoplasm of the left main bronchus. So our STEM code is the fact that the patient has malignant cancer of the bronchus or lung, and then we're able to that STEM code doesn't identify if it's the bronchus or the lung individually. It is one code by itself, but we can further state that it's the bronchus and the lung, which that should be green, that other ampersand. So you can see it all spread out, the three different codes that we're using, one STEM code, two extension codes, and then we see what it looks like. 2C25.Z ampersand XA61 M6 ampersand XK8G. And we know that these are extension codes because they start with an X. Now, left, by the way, is always XK8G. So if you have a fracture of the left humerus, it will be the fracture, open or closed, like we saw in the other one, but it will have the XK8G, because that's the extension code for left, no matter where it applies. So that's kind of cool too, right? You're going to have that memorized pretty quickly. Let's look at this example. We have a malignant neoplasm of overlapping sites of the left bronchus and lung. That's significantly different than the previous example. However, it's still a lung cancer. It is the bronchus and the lung, but overlapping sites is means something different than bronchus and lung. Okay. So what does that look like? Well, we have one stem code and then we have 3 extension codes. Now we already know XK8G is left, but we're able to state that it is this malignant neoplasm of other or ill-defined sites in the respiratory system or intrathoracic organs unspecified, and bronchus and lung and left, which that should have been green. What does that look like? That's one code, 2C29.Z ampersand XA61M6 ampersand XA57M6 ampersand XK8G. How exciting! Now, I just saw that Michael said, yikes. This is not going to be difficult because you will learn them individually and you get to place them. You already know what left is, and it'll always be the same code for left. And guess what? You now know what the extension code is for lung, XA57M6. And you also know what the extension code for the bronchus is, XA61M6. But you don't have to have these memorized. All right. We now have another cancer code, benign neoplasm of short bones of right upper limb. So we have one stem code and we have 2 extension codes. We have benign osteogenic tumors of bone or articular cartilage of limbs, bones of the upper extremity, right. 2E83.5 ampersand XA7R53 ampersand XK9K. You won't be using these for your license plate, will ya? But it will be fun to play games with these codes. Another example, malignant neoplasm of bilateral ovaries. Malignant neoplasm of ovary unspecified and bilateral. So that is going to be 2C73.Z ampersand XK9J because that's bilateral. Now you know what left is, and now you know what bilateral is. Bilateral will always be XK9J. Jennifer says fun. Yes, I think it's incredibly fun. Now let's kind of wrap up the Postcoordination. One thing you need to know is it's free. This is already out there for you to start playing with. And you can go to find a code and you can play with it there. It also is available through the World Health Organization website. It is a digital only code set. What do you think that means? That means you will not have to buy a manual every year. It's all digital, right? So not only do most people buy a manual, but then they have an online tool. So they end up having to pay for both if your employer doesn't give that to you. It's only available in a web platform, in other words. Okay. It means it's integratable because of this into all electronic health records. That means that it'll be much easier for them to integrate it into whether they use Cerner, Epic, eClinicalWorks, whatever program they use, Tebra. End-to-end digital solutions with APIs, online and offline tools. You can get an API, allows the software developers to integrate the ICD-11. Hold on. And the setup to prevent implausible or impossible code combinations. So because it is set up as an online tool, online software, it will not allow you to put together codes that can't be put together. In other words, you would not make a code for say, a what the previous example that we had, let me just go back, for these malignant neoplasms of bilateral ovaries, it will not let you use XK9J with the left extension code and the right extension code because it knows you can't do that. So it will prevent you from making those mistakes because it's a digital code set. The application of the post coordination, which just means you're putting those codes together, it really is going to allow us to have a vast number of new and more detailed diagnostic categories. It's going to increase from 14,000 to over 55,000 unique code possibilities. And this expansion is going to allow us to be more precise. It's going to give us more improved coding in emerging fields like genomics and also mental health, which gets a lot of attention right now. Greater specificity in areas such as antimicrobial resistant, patient safety, and cancer registrations. It's so exciting. That means we're going to be able to get one step closer to tracking statistics in cancer, which will make us one step closer to cures. Practical considerations as we wrap this up, guys, is that mandatory versus optional post coordination is built in. You avoid redundancy and incorrect combination because, again, it's an online tool, and best practices for effective post coordination. So it's going to prompt you for the proper post coordination or extension codes, and then not allow you to grab extension codes that aren't applicable to that STEM code. One of the other benefits that we often don't think about that we play a major role in as coders is research and epidemiologists are going to benefit. We don't think about that because it's going to give us more clinical relevant coding for conditions like HIV and diabetes complications. We're going to have standardized data collections that enable large scale international research. And I already told you with my mother's cancer why that's beneficial. You probably are thinking ways right now that it's going to be beneficial because of that. Improved ability to track and compare health trends globally. And that's what AI is going to do for us. We're going to wrap up with an example. This is pulled straight from the tool itself that Find a Code has. And the first thing I looked up was migraine unspecified because there's multiple pages of codes for migraine and specificity. But what if you have a migraine due to a medication? Well, we have our STEM code for migraine 8880.Z, and then another STEM code for the medication substance, drug, medication, biological substance associated with injury or harm in therapeutic use. Okay. But then the extension is, well, what is the actual substance? That would be the extension. And I thought of collagen. Now they're advertising those drinks to make you feel better. Well, they're chock full of collagen. That's one of the ingredients. And of course, it'll make your hair and nails look fabulous, but people will be are ingesting these huge amounts of collagen. Well, what if it's migraine inducing for some people? Or for me now, as getting a diagnosis of alpha gal, I can't have collagen. And so it would definitely make me very ill. And because of that, that extension code XM94X8 would be able to link what gave me the allergic reaction. It was an ingestion of collagen. But what caused the migraine? Collagen. So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. Challenges for the future, though. I mean, it's not perfect. We have to be aware of that. There are limitations of post coordination. Some of the root causes don't crosswork real well to from I-10 to I-11 yet. They're still building out the code set. It's it's predominantly done, but there's tweaking, just like we have to tweak every year new codes anyway. Well, that's still being done. There's improvements for the potential expansions. There is impact on health information systems and coding practices that we have to think about, and importance of post coordination in modern health classifications. That's all stuff that they have stated they are working on to improve. Now that we've gotten to this point, I want to tell you that this is a series that Find a Code and Nova Health has agreed to sponsor, and it's going to go through the entire code set. I'm so excited to tell you that. We're going to do it every second Thursday of the month, and we're going to just go through each chapter of I-11. Now, our next section, though, is going to be divided up in two parts because, one, it's the first time we're going to go over that full chapter, and we want to make sure that in the beginning you get lots of practice scenarios. Some of the other chapters will be not 2 sessions. But next month, we're going to go over battling bugs and parasite, infectious diseases. And the code range is 1A00 through 1H0Z. I know you're already excited about that, and I'm excited to create that presentation for you. As we wrap up now, I want you to know that the password to be able to get the CEUs is going to be put in the chat. You can't share that with anybody. Remember, it's exclusive. And don't forget, you still have to register to be able to apply for that free CEU. That's so that we can give it to you and prove to the credentialing bodies that you actually attended, and that's an exclusive password. We do have a cell up on CCO if there's anything that you need as far as other CEUs, blitzes, and courses that we have. Our intern program is back open again. We are accepting new interns. You do have to be credentialed. You can be a CPCA. You could have just passed your certification exam yesterday and you can apply. There is a vetting process for that, but you can go out to the website and look for that. We are going to, in addition to our monthly I-11 sponsored by FAC webinar, we're going to, we are now doing the monthly CCO Club webinar, and you will get one free CEU for that. So you're going to get 2 CEUs by following us every month. 2 CEUs free. That's unbelievable. I know. The Replay Club is how you're going to get the CEUs for those, again, are for club members only. So the free CEU for the monthly webinars, you can attend free, but if you want the CEU, you have to be a club member. Okay. And otherwise, you can watch the webinar on YouTube. Don't forget, we have a new course, the QPen course. You may want to pick that if you're the winner today of our drawing. How are we doing on that drawing? Boyd is randomly picking an attendee.
There was no randomness around this at all. I have a helper in the background, my 10-year-old Zofia. We have 335 people on our webinar from 733 that registered. So just about a 50% show up rate. So congratulations, everyone who is here. Yeah. And our winner is number 230, which is Mary Levi, Levi.
Yay! Very good. We'll put your name in the chat. If you want to just put a hand up or something, that'll be great. To be able to get your prize, you're going to go to helpdesk@cco.us. We will put your name in for that and let the girls know that you were the winner tonight, and there's several things that you can choose from. You may, again, want to choose the QPen course and get a new credential. We really appreciate everybody joining us. It was a lot of fun. I'm looking so forward to the rest of the year as we give you more information about I-11. If you're taking the initiative to start learning and practicing the new code set that will eventually come, we don't have a date, we don't know when, but that makes you a leader in the industry already for wherever you work. If you're taking that first step, you can let them know that you went through these I-11 webinars and that you've not only had exposure, but that you've gotten to practice and kind of drill down on each individual chapter, because I know they will be looking for people that want to take the reins and offer leadership when it comes to the transition of the code set. Don't forget that your password is in the chat. I just saw Boyd put that in there. So that is an exclusive password. You do have to register. And but if you are in the CCO club already, or if you choose to join the CCO club, then that'll be real easy because it'll flash up on the CCO club for you. Anything else, Boyd, that we need to cover before we let them go for the evening?
I think you did an excellent job. And Alicia, lots of people were saying that you are an awesome trainer. So thank you on behalf of the CCO team for being with us tonight and sharing your knowledge and your passion for coding and your experience day to day, full time, all the time. This isn't just a hobby for you.
No, you're right. And you know what? It is a lot of fun, and I appreciate the kind words. Tonight, I wasn't able to watch the chat, so again, we appreciate Boyd doing that for us and really keeping those slides lively for us. So I know some of you guys have missed him. Some of our people, I've recognized some names that have been with us for a long time. So the team's getting back together and really enjoy being able to offer this knowledge to you. So spread the word.
So until next time, I think we've got another webinar in 2 weeks from now, right, Alicia?
Mm-hmm. The last Thursday of the month will be the next webinar. It was going to be the third Thursday of the month, but it's actually the last Thursday of the month.
Yep. So go to the website, and that's where you can register. Are we doing any CEUs on the next webinar? Do you remember?
It is a CCO club webinar, and yes, it will have CEUs.
There you go, because I know everybody loves CEUs if you can
That's
get
right.
them.
And if you're a club member, you get one free.
There you go.
You'll get it free.
Awesome. So good night, everybody, and wherever you are in the world. And until next time, peace out from CCO.us. Looking for medical coding, medical billing, and risk adjustment education? Learn more at cco.us.